fact of the matter is the White House and a sitting president of the United States was talking about Bitcoin, and that's a big deal. I work for Jan3. Jan3 is a Bitcoin technology company that's committed to helping to speed up hyper-Bitcoinization and nation-state adoption. When we have pictures taken with politicians, and politicians these days still hold some credibility, this actually can help with adoption, and people are like, oh, maybe I should start studying about Bitcoin. Fiat techniques that can only really exist in the fiat world to the advantage of try and take on Bitcoin. And it's really interesting, some of the revelations that we've had recently, like Jack Mallers had his account closed down by JP Morgan as well. Savers can actually withdraw their self-custody Bitcoin in minutes, for example. And their banks' balance sheets are essentially a scarce asset. That's Bitcoin. And it cannot be printed or conjured out of thin air to pay for, oh, whoops, we're laundering for another child trafficker again moment. It's going to stop all this.
Hi, Filip. How are you doing? Everything fine on your end?
Very good. Very good. Very good to see you, Robin. This is my third time here now. Very excited.
It's been a pleasure. Yeah, like you're one of the few guests actually that already made it the third time on the podcast. And so I don't know, maybe 10, 20 people or something like that, then made it the third time. And so thank you so much for doing that and for coming back on the podcast.
Nice. Yeah. You must be doing something right if I'm back here for the third time.
I'm just bugging you too much.
And I accept.
But maybe for the few people that haven't seen the first two episodes and haven't seen you around, because I think you're a really unique character in the Bitcoin space. What you're doing with Gen 3 and all of the things. Maybe give us a brief overview of like who you are and especially why you're excited about Bitcoin.
Sure. So yeah, Bitcoin does attract a lot of unique, exciting individual characters. I guess you can say that I'm included in that. So I am Filip Karadjordjevic, or otherwise known as Prince Filip Karadjordjevic of Serbia and Yugoslavia. I work for Jan3. Jan3 is a Bitcoin technology company that's committed to helping to speed up hyper-Bitcoinization and nation-state adoption around the world. But also we have our bottom-up Bitcoin technology tools like Aqua Wallet, which many Bitcoiners have heard of. And I am a Bitcoiner. I was in traditional finance for maybe 15 years until I discovered Bitcoin and became a Bitcoin maximalist and decided that I wanted to dedicate a big part of my life to promoting and working on Bitcoin. And that's what led me to working for Jan3.
Awesome, yeah, and it's so interesting because you mentioned it right now. Like you make the bottom up, but also the top down, because you talk with the leaders of the world and also like make those bottom up tools. Is there like a special importance that you actually, because there's a lot of those controversies saying like no, like it has to come from bottom up, and it has to be grassroots, but then also like we have to orange pill from top down. And the more I think about that, I feel like we kind of have to do anyways both. It's not like either or, like it's just like both kind of coming together.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Bitcoin is a bottom-up strategy. It's a grassroots strategy. It's decentralization at its finest. It's the best, one of the best decentralized systems ever discovered by humans. But as I said before, and what you mentioned is that we work on nation-state adoption for Bitcoin, and that is a top-down approach. And we see that maybe Bitcoin that top-down can lend a hand to giving some sort of, I wouldn't say credibility, but helping Bitcoin, helping orange pill people, and helping people understand Bitcoin, and lending some sort of credibility when we speak to a head of state, a politician, a minister, maybe even another monarch, or just influential individuals. And when they're side by, we have a picture taken from them, with myself or Samson Mao or someone else working at Jan3 or any Bitcoiner for that respect. When we have pictures taken with politicians, and politicians these days still hold some credibility, that this actually can help with adoption, and people are like, oh, maybe I should start studying about Bitcoin. Maybe I should start looking into it. If that politician says that is having a picture taken with Samson Mao, who is Samson Mao? What does he do? Let's look into it. So it leads to that. So it's in a way, Bitcoin doesn't have a marketing department. It's decentralized, I said before, but we do what we can. All the Bitcoiners around the world do what they can to try and work on Bitcoin marketing. and it's completely organic in that respect, and it's beautiful.
It's almost like, because I think about that a lot, orange pilling people that aren't into Bitcoin, that aren't into, because I think we've spoke to most people that are into freedom tech, into sovereign tech, that are really hardcore. Like the first 15, 16 years now in Bitcoin, we've kind of come to the hardcore group that is really into freedom, into money. You can also see that a little bit in people from the gold wars and now are coming slowly into Bitcoin, are getting warmed up to the idea of Bitcoin. A lot of gold bugs are now at Bitcoin conferences. I'm always fascinated by how many people I speak to. They're saying like, I was in gold before. So I feel like we are slowly hitting the maturity in a small category of people that are really strong on freedom. And now we slowly, very early, but slowly hitting kind of the mass market, very early on. But still like it slowly comes. And I feel like we really need those. As Bitcoiners, it's weird to say because we don't want to have we ask permissions from politicians, but it's about a deeper relationship because a lot of people respect politicians, especially those that don't get Bitcoin. And we want everyone to get Bitcoin, not just like a very small niche kind of group, if this makes sense of what I'm saying.
Yeah, it does. It's funny where we are in the sort of adoption cycle. I think the majority of Bitcoin maximists are very much freedom-loving, liberty-loving individuals. And they, thanks to either Bitcoin or whatever the ideology is or what they might have got into, like myself, I thought I was pretty open and free and in tune into politics. But then when I discovered Bitcoin, it sort of opens your world completely to what really politics is about and how the world really works, because money is central to that. So I think with a lot of the early adopters, there were a lot of tech-orientated people, a lot of the big whales out there that were tech-orientated people that weren't, they were the cypherpunks and stuff. But now I think the majority of the adoption, the people, the advocates for Bitcoin, are very strong liberty-minded, freedomist people, people that are a bit more with maybe conservative viewpoints, a little bit right of center. And this is interesting. But now I think, given that Bitcoin is moved up in the adoption cycle, now we're probably at the early majority stage. Maybe, it's hard to gauge where we are exactly. That, of course, Bitcoin, given that it's money, that we're seeing what's known as the suit coin phenomena, and we're seeing a lot of traditional finance. I hate calling traditional finance traditional because there's nothing really traditional about fiat. So I would say the fiat world is paying attention more to Bitcoin, and we've seen. I think the big watershed moment was the ETF introduction back in 2020, January 2024. That's what really led the whole institutional wave. And given that Bitcoin, as it's can classify as a different asset class, but it's an asset class that doesn't really fit into fiat portfolios for the time being. So in order to get exposure to Bitcoin, companies then have to rely on ETFs, and they can't actually buy the thing, which is Bitcoin. And ETFs really help to speed that up. And so people ended up finding this new interesting ETF that was tracking Bitcoin. So they would get onto the balance sheet and they would see that the price would go up. And I guess that woke up a few people and made people study about Bitcoin. And of course, the next watershed moment, I believe, was in terms of adoption was with Trump. And when he was elected, he used Bitcoin on his platform. And he created the Bitcoin Reserve. Okay, there can be arguments whether he actually did anything or not, but the fact of the matter is the White House and a sitting president of the United States was talking about Bitcoin, and that's a big deal. Whether he did it the way that we wanted it or not, it happened, and that's exciting. So now we're at the point where I think we talked about this offline just before, where some of the fiat world is really paying attention to what Bitcoin really is and what it means and how it can challenge the current fiat world. And we've seen recently with JP Morgan how they are using their so-called flex of being too big to fail to muscle into Bitcoin and trying to, I wouldn't say short, they're not actually directly shorting MicroStrategy, which is Seyr's company, which is becoming the Bitcoin, but it has been the Bitcoin treasury company. But they're using their weight, their status to attack Bitcoin indirectly and using fiat techniques that can only really exist in the fiat world to the advantage to try and take on Bitcoin. And it's really interesting, some of the revelations that we've had recently, like Jack Mallers being had his account closed down by JP Morgan as well, knowing very well who Jack Mallers. Yeah, I said Jack Mallers, didn't I? I get the two Jacks mixed up sometimes.
First time you said Jack Mallers.
Yeah, sorry, Jack Mallers. Yeah, Jack Mallers, being a very big, one of the biggest Bitcoin advocates out there, had his account recently shut down by JP Morgan. It's a little bit suspicious, that. So, yeah, it's interesting times where we are with adoption.
And it's interesting when a figure like Jack Mallers gets kicked out of a bank because it obviously can't be of financial reasons. I have a really hard time that he does anything illegal or anything of sorts of that. And so the only real reason for me could be, Bitcoin. And so I obviously have no clue why they did it. And Jack Mallers himself does not know it, because at least he said that he asked them multiple times and they always said like they're not allowed to say it. But for me, all logical conclusions points to they did it because of Bitcoin.
Yes, exactly. I mean, what happened, I think there's more, I'm sure there's more to the story, of course, that we won't be privy to. But on July 7th, JP Morgan just decided to raise their margin requirement for clients on using MSTR, MicroStrategy as collateral. They raised it from like 50 to 95%. And this is true. This is actually what happened. So those couldn't really keep up with it, had to be forced to scramble, meet their calls and be liquidated. This led to basically, this is one of the first that, the JP Morgan is effectively shoving a bunch of their own customers offside and helping trigger a sell-off in MicroStrategy. This was back in July. And then clients were asked why, and then I think JP Morgan was on the side that, that they had to change firm-wide, change lending values and blah, blah. They gave their sort of legal excuse to it. But I think there's a lot more to the story that we're not really privy to. And I'm trying to look into it, and it's very exciting that what the changes that they did, that people claiming that actually that JP Morgan actually actively directly shorting the stock, but they're not actually doing that. They're actually just making it possible for people to short it. So it's, as I said before, it's the sort of fiat parasitical system trying to use its too big to fail Cantillon weight to shut down Bitcoin, and they're picking on strategy.
What do you think? Even besides what's currently going on, because I have a feeling that if Bitcoin wins, strategy will win with them. No matter if MSCI now doesn't get them into the index or kicks them out of some indexes. I think this is all short-term thing, or maybe medium-term thing. But what do you think is the future of strategy in a Bitcoin world?
Oof, they're the clear winners in the Bitcoin treasury world, and they're just going to be stacked. They've already stacked more Bitcoin than any probably company will ever wish or could ever stack. I think what they're doing is genius. I think it's brilliant, and I don't know. I really don't know what the outcome of strategy will be in the future. But to us Bitcoiners and to people who understand Bitcoin, that concentration of Bitcoin is not actually a threat to the rest of the network. Everyone in Bitcoin plays on the same playing level field. The person with the most amount of Bitcoin plays by the same rules as the person with the least amount of Bitcoin. So this is the beauty about Bitcoin. But what I think it's doing is it's defying the current fiat system, the current traditional TradFi system. It's opening people's eyes, and the fiat system is only very good at attacking and censoring and closing people's accounts. They have those weapons in their hand, but they don't have truth in their hand. Bitcoin has truth in their hand. And I think this will help to reveal a lot of the game is up, and the emperor's not wearing any clothes, and we'll see a lot of the unhealthy practices of the fiat system being exposed. And with it, we see. I'm going to pick on JP Morgan. I'm going to be really picking on JP Morgan because they really have revealed themselves. They're the bankers of Epstein. They were Epstein's private banker. And, they recently, their model was that it's coming out is that they would rather keep a private client like Epstein and say, okay, what are the expected revenues from a dirty client like Epstein, and and then minus the probability of enforcement, the size of the fines for keeping someone like that who's always going to get into trouble. And they realize that the expected profit is actually going to be always doing well if they can pay off the fines, because the client is bringing a lot of money in, and that money comes from very dirty, horrible, evil sources. Because they have cheap money on their hands. They're able to use credit expansions, bailouts, QE, the too big to fail thing. The enforcement on these individuals is very weak. Only like 5 or 10% prosecution for these big elite bankers actually come through. And the fines at the end of the day, they're paid in printed money or effectively socialized via dilutions and more bailouts. And no one really goes to jail. And at the end of the day, the stock either doesn't really move or it usually recovers. It always recovers at this point, but maybe not in the future. So yeah, it's quite interesting times that these companies are starting to reveal themselves, and truth is finally winning. We're in a point of time where truth is finally showing its face, and the more they try to censor, shut down, or stop us, the more the truth actually will shine through.
I talked about with my community on the live stream yesterday on that very matter. And the more I dove deep into that story, the more I feel like there is the beginning of a biggest, at least there's a chance of the beginning of a bigger story here, where we have this kind of a strategy versus bank situation. We saw that happening with a lot of very active and motivated people that made GameStop possible. And I was like, strategy has a different story. Obviously, it's not comparable to GameStop at the moment. But what if something grows out of that? I haven't seen in a very long time so much news coverage and excitement and memes around strategy than just like yesterday and today, just because of Jeff Epstein, the banking thing with JP Morgan and the short position, and then the MSCI indices, which is really interesting. Is there a chance that the story is just like getting bigger, and actually like strategy could be almost having a Bitcoin meme effect that GameStop has in a positive, if the most positive intentions, then in a way?
I think so. I think you're quite right to say it is a bit of a GameStop moment in the way that people actually now be able to buy strategy at good value right now, and also use and understand that JP Morgan is not really as solid as it's said to be. So it's a good time to start shorting or start to GameStop it down. So it's an exciting time, and I think strategy is acting a little bit like the David of the story. It could be quite a sweet moment of like how to describe this, but as you said, I think strategy is defying the current system as it is. And this is the beauty about Bitcoin, what the Bitcoin standard, so to speak, actually does, what it's actually going to change. That we all know that Bitcoin can't fix evil behavior. It can't fix bad players, but it can help to stop them and help to weed them out. Bitcoin living under the Bitcoin standard, it's much harder to be a bad player. It's much easier and the Bitcoin standard would actually incentivize people to play better. It's, with under a Bitcoin standard, you can't always assume that a central bank will be there to backstop these bad players with freshly printed money. This means a bank under a Bitcoin standard is much more fragile, and savers can actually withdraw their self-custody Bitcoin in minutes, for example. And their banks' balance sheets are essentially a scarce asset. That's Bitcoin, and it cannot be printed or conjured out of thin air to pay for, oh, whoops, we're laundering for another child trafficker again moment. It's going to stop all this, because there's more at stake here, and it aligns people's incentives to do good rather than bad, and that's going to be beautiful. So I'm not too sure what the strategy situations, how it's going to pan out, but it's definitely waking up a few people out there. And I say waking up, it's just proving people's point that the system is rigged, and we're aware of it now. We know what's going on, and it's pretty obvious.
I have an interesting one. We now are slowly coming to the first year of Trump. I think it's like a little over 300 days. I think end of January, something middle of January was the actual day. So like we're coming closer to the first year of Donald Trump being in his second period president. Cynthia Lummis posted it, I think yesterday or day before yesterday, about the choke point 2.0 is still alive. And then there's this whole JP Morgan thing that we just described. Is how successful, or how would you describe the first year of Trump with all that things going on? Because we were kind of expecting that all those things are kind of like at the end now, or like is this like the last things that come out?
How successful they are in terms of Bitcoin, or how successful they are as an administration?
Just in terms of Bitcoin. I don't really care about the other politicians.
Yeah. I don't think very successful on the other side. That's another conversation. I think really they lost a lot of people. And again, related to what we're talking about before with Epstein, that moment in July when they didn't want to release the files. Now they voted I know I'm going off topic over here, but now they've been forced to release those files. And that's very interesting, whether they will do it properly or not, or whether they just release a bunch of blacked out lines. Anyway, going back to how they're successful they are with Bitcoin, and if they kept their promises, to some extent, I'd say they have kept their promises. They did say they will stick to create a Bitcoin reserve. And, there was at one point in I think it was February or March this year when they talked about that, and they were talking about, it was about a digital assets reserve. And it got people in a kerfuffle. Like they were saying, oh no, they're going to combine Bitcoin with all the other shit coins. But actually at the end of the day, no, they created two different reserves, one for Bitcoin and one for digital assets. But it's the way that they wanted to increase their Bitcoin treasury, and they're not actually going out to buying Bitcoin. They're not actually finding any well-meaning, budget-neutral ways of finding of stacking Bitcoin. They're actually looking to get seized coins into their account. So that's kind of questionable. With regards to the shit coins, I think they're not actively looking to fill those bags, but they're trying to sell them. But of course, any seized coins over there, they'll happily take. So all very questionable. And yeah, I wish they could actually look into better budget neutral ways of stacking Bitcoin. And I think the best way to do that is to mine it, really. Given that the US is an energy rich country and you have a lot of opportunity to find stranded energy, to find wasted energy out there and to monetize it. And in doing so, they can actually improve their energy grids. And the most important thing is not just improve the energy grids, but also lower the price of energy for their citizens. And this is the beauty about Bitcoin, and the economics behind Bitcoin mining, which is one of the most misunderstood things out there. And I think that's really a part of Bitcoin that's going to really change the world for the better, not just the monetary side, but the energy side as well. And America is sitting such a sweet opportunity right now to acquire a lot of Bitcoin through its excess energy.
Is Bitcoin mining the most effective way in orange pill nation states? Is that like the best way?
I think it's the one that nation states are doing the most. It's the most. It's probably the most adopted. We're at Jan 3. We're writing a Bitcoin adoption report and a worldwide Bitcoin adoption report. I am not writing it myself, but I bet you my money is that the thing that's driving the most adoption out there is, of course, is mining. You have lots of operations happening around the world. For example, you had Oman in 2023. The big news was the Kingdom of Oman, a monarchy, which I'm very sympathetic to, is revealed that they invested $1.1 billion into mining infrastructure. And that's huge. Given that they're an oil-rich country, it's a very sensible thing to do. You have United Arab Emirates, and particularly, I think, the Abu Dhabi Emirate. They have a lot of oil drilling, a lot of flair, and now they're starting to capture that flair and turn it into hard money. It's beautiful. You have Bhutan is the great success story. Another monarchy. Monarchies usually tend to do a lot of the right things. They were secretly mining Bitcoin for years using their excess hydroelectricity. And it wasn't until they started delving into I think it was Celsius. When the Celsius crashed, they were sort of exposed to that, and that's what led to them to be figured out that they were mining Bitcoin. But having said that, they're still actively mining Bitcoin, and now they've got a decent balance sheet with Bitcoin, and actually using that to pay off government officials and service people. And I mean, people say, "Oh, they're selling the Bitcoin. That's not a good thing." Well, actually, no. They're actually not having to tax people. They're not taxing their citizens to pay government employees. They're actually using their hard mined money to do that, and that's brilliant. We can all take a leaf from that page. Kazakhstan, I believe the government is also mining. When China went offline in 2021, when China banned Bitcoin mining, that was a bit of a Hydra moment, like the serpent Hydra. You cut off one head and 10 heads grow. And that's to prove that Bitcoin is not just, it's anti-fragile, one of the best examples of anti-fragility ever. And when China banned Bitcoin mining, and that was, I think, May 2021, when the difficulty adjustment lowered, the biggest downward adjustment ever, you had a lot of machines ending up in Kazakhstan. And now, so they've got a lot of the percentage of the hash rate happening there. I believe Ethiopia, I'm not sure if the state or not, but they've gone to about 2.5% of the global hash rate is happening in Ethiopia right now. Who am I missing? Well, the states, it's more private ventures, but you have big mining operations happening in Texas with all the oil drilling there and a lot of the flaring that's happening there, and it just makes sense to do that. And at Jan 3, I'm currently working on trying to find some mining opportunities. I'm working on 2 potential opportunities here, private ones in Serbia, but also one in Republika Srpska, maybe with the state of Republika Srpska to find a power purchasing agreement. Republika Srpska is the Serbian autonomous region of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And they have actually excess energy. So I'm looking at ways of trying to tap into that and proving to them what it can do for them as a nation, as an autonomous region. Where else? I mean, I'm probably missing some other countries that have adopted it. I'm trying to pick up, obviously, nation state adoption, government adoption. No, I think that's what I can think of right now.
One thing that also recently happened was the Czech National Bank having the $1 million experiment with like Bitcoin crypto. Is that a big thing?
That's right. I mean, there's only $1 million in Bitcoin, and they say digital assets. I mean, so stable coins. They have their balance sheet is like 100 and some billion euros, and so 1 million euros is not much at all, but it's just them experimenting with it. But still, that's a big moment for Bitcoin. The fact that a central bank has actually purchased Bitcoin, think, as far as we know, openly, that's the first of its kind, and probably won't be the last of its kind. Yeah, exciting news. Exciting news. We at Jan3 tried to have meetings with central bankers around the world. Samson actually was in Japan, meeting with the finance ministry there. I went to visit the central bank to speak to them about Bitcoin. Japan is exciting, actually. Japan, Samson's been there 3 times this year. We had some interesting conversations with some politicians there. There's more and more people waking up to it and understanding it. Japan has good relations with the US, and I think they saw what Trump was doing, and they're recognizing that it's something that you can't not pay attention to.
I also saw American Bitcoin, the company from Donald Trump's son. He recently made a selfie showing the whole mining rigs. I mean, it's a private company, I assume not the government, but it's still the son of the president, I guess.
I didn't see that, no.
Maybe I can pull it up, but I will search it when you talk later. But why did you call Japan exciting? It's interesting because the company my girlfriend is doing a lot in Japan actually also. But for me, I never was there, and it's an interesting different culture. So I really want to get there. But is there something specific also with Bitcoin that you've seen there?
Not nothing actually just specific. It's just a fun little bit of momentum happening there. And I believe that's thanks to the Trump effect. As you saw, Trump, US administration, we had huge handshake with Japan. And I think they've invested like several, I don't know how many $1 trillion or like $500 billion into the US. As a result of the tariff war, then they decided, that they better work on good relations, and so I think there was a bigger business opportunity there, and maybe something came of that, and they saw that the Trump administration and a lot of them are owning Bitcoin. A lot of them actually have Bitcoin in their personal ownership. So maybe, I'm not too sure. I haven't actually studied exactly what caused that, but there is a lot of people in Japan that are getting into Bitcoin. And so there's been a couple of big Bitcoin conferences this year. One recently that Samson was at last week, or this week, I should say, right now. And his third visit, his first and second visit this year, he met with politicians, members of ruling parties that are not ruling parties, that are in members of parliament. One from the centre right party and one from the centre left party, actually, which shows just the range of political awareness is out there for Bitcoin. And so Japan's exciting. There's something happening there. We're trying to push for it. I also wrote a letter to the Emperor of Japan. I've got a good relationship with the Japanese ambassador to Serbia, a very good gentleman, and he helped deliver a letter I wrote to the Japanese ambassador. To the Japanese emperor. I mean, the Japanese emperor, he is part of a constitutional monarchy. He has no direct decision-making power. He has soft power, and he's not like he is able to also actively say, I want to buy Bitcoin on my balance sheet. He has committees of financial committees governing and dictating the wealth of the family. But if we get conversations happening with even people like that, with reigning monarchs of constitutional monarchies, it's always a tick for Bitcoin adoption.
It's super interesting to see. It's like the whole world, and we're slowly getting the Bitcoin adoption. I just quickly show it to you, the video I meant for people that might be interested in it. This is, can you see it? No, wait. Yeah, this should be it. This is American Bitcoin. I have no clue what the company really does, but I looked into them a little bit. I guess they want to get into Bitcoin mining, and I just saw that video from Eric Trump posting it, and he's just excited about Bitcoin mining and the facility there.
That's a big place.
That's what I was also thought of, like, oh, that's a big place. And yes, it's not America mining
But
Bitcoin.
we're not so involved in the States. There's enough people working on Bitcoin adoption in the States. So I mean, this is, yeah, but I'll look into that. That's a very neat looking location. He's is that one of their locations or one of his?
Yes, that's American Bitcoin. Look, I guess so, especially because there's all the flags out there. Right? I can show you in the video. There you can see the.
I mean, it's in America, yeah, but
here.
is it government owned, or is it his own private venture, or is it?
Oh, I think it's owned by ABDC. So like this American Bitcoin, but I don't know what the structure of American Bitcoin is. I mean,
I've seen that logo. I've seen that before. I'm going to look into it. Yeah, thank you.
And I was just curious about it because I think politicians around the world are looking very closely what America is doing, because America is a big power in the world. And so the son of the president pushing like a huge mining facility like that and building all those things out is something where I'm like, all the countries will look at that and they will do their research, and this will just like accelerate the educational process. And we know, like, if you are educated on like Bitcoin mining, you will eventually do it. Like,
talking about education, actually, that's another thing which I find interesting is Harvard University, its endowment has bought quite a big position in the Bitcoin ETF and BlackRock's ETF. That's actually quite interesting, given Harvard. It's one of the most famous universities in the world, the famous university of the world, Ivy League, also known very well that they've actually, it's gone a little bit left leaning, but the fact is that they actually hold Bitcoin ETF, not Bitcoin directly, but that's really quite encouraging to see. Shows that someone there is paying attention.
I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called Microseed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups, because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Again, that's microseed.io to get your last backup tool you ever need. The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I finally and officially mine Bitcoin. This is not just something to stack more Satoshis, but it's most importantly also to support the network. Individual miners are the ones that keep the Bitcoin network decentralized. And by the way, you get KYC free Bitcoin. That's why I use Simple Mining. I get an actual proper Bitcoin miner. They set it up for me. They repair it if it breaks down. And most importantly, they let me choose the pool and even connect my own full node. I'm completely sovereign and I'm completely in control and I can sign up with Ocean, no account needed. I just give them a Bitcoin address and then there's mining going on. No KYC, nothing. So if you're ready to mine Bitcoin, go to simplemining.io, tell them you come from Robin and let's mine Bitcoin together.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there was this professor that wrote a hit piece on Bitcoin, like why it's not worth anything and all of that. I don't remember his name. And then when the news came out that Harvard did that with the Bitcoin ETF,
yes,
he doubled down on it and says like, oh no, it's still not good. Like, and I was like, interesting. His own employer does it, but he still shits on the strategy.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe that Harvard Endowment tripled down their position down to like $440 million in Bitcoin in the ETF. That's huge.
It's not a small position. Absolutely.
No, it's not. No.
I don't know if we ever covered that on the podcast, maybe in the first one, I don't remember. But you speak often about monarchies, and I think it's something that if we haven't covered it in our podcast, the first one, we definitely did not cover it in any other my episodes in almost now 700. Why are you very positive on monarchies, and what is kind of like the advantage that you see to other forms of democracies, other forms like democracies and other forms? And the interesting part for me is also, where do you think Bitcoin influences how the state in the future will look like? And we are maybe able to see more monarchies in the future with a Bitcoin standard?
Yes. So to answer the first part of your question is, I'm going to speaking about monarchy in its purest sense, in absolute sense. It is something that I will have to be careful to fully advocate for monarchy, absolute monarchy, given that we live in a very democratic friendly world, and they see something like monarchy. A lot of people will see something like absolute monarchy as a sort of dictatorship, authoritarian. But really, when you dig into it and you start studying it more, you actually realize that actually the governance structure of democracy versus that of monarchy is very interesting, the differences. And actually one is probably it's inferior to the other. And I'm saying that as democracy being the greater of two evils versus monarchy. And I think this is very interesting. This is something that I wasn't fully aware of until I started understanding more about Bitcoin. And Bitcoin really opens your mind to a lot of things. That really democracy it's one of the main inefficiencies is that it opens itself up to a lot of corruption. You know when politicians are out there campaigning to be elected, they campaign by promising the populace, the people that they're trying to campaign towards, free stuff, essentially. They're trying to say, hey, if you vote for me, I can do this, this, and that. This also opens the door to a lot of lobbying as well, whether it's legal or not. This also creates a situation where people with money and influence is like, hey, I'll vote for you if you do this for me. So this leads to people being put into power and they have to return the favor. Or the people put in power and they're just saying that they'll give free stuff to other people and never actually meet that. But over time, this compounds and this creates this sort of a swamp-like system. And that's what people in the States refer to as Washington, D.C. being a swamp, because it's just entrenched in corruption. And this is natural. This happens in every country. In some countries, it's more visible than other countries. Some countries, they're able to hide it better than other countries. But we all know that it's happening everywhere. And the reason why monarchy has less ability for corruption is that you take away that vote away from people, so you don't have that favor giving. Monarchy is very black and white. Those who are in power is a family, essentially their family. I don't have to give any favors to anyone else. However, that family is incentivized. This is okay. So that first part, okay, that family is in full power, absolute power. It's very black and white. People think, okay, that's very unfair. Okay, that seems unfair. It looks like a dictator. But that family also wants to remain that position for generations to come. So it's in his interest to take his least from the present and leave as much for the future for his children. So that, in a sense, means that monarchy is incentivized to have stronger property rights than democracies. So already, you see that the incentive is there to protect people's properties, so that that then lowers the time preference of the governance. So of the governance structure. I mean, what time preference is how much do you discount the future? So if your money, for example, in Bitcoin, you know, if, in the world of money, this is how I learned about the concept of time preferences. Like if your money rots, like fiat, you live for today. You have to spend today. Otherwise you can't save that money, and that money will always lose its value. So if your savings hold value, you can plant, you can wait and build. A lower time preference means you have more capital formation, more apprenticeship, more, you end up having, ability to build more beautiful things, better structures. You end up with more cathedrals or more, and with fewer disposable boxes, basically. So this is how the link between monarchy and Bitcoin comes in. You know, Bitcoin is the first money with a perfectly credible issuance schedule. It's scheduled and official for until there's no more coins to be mined, and it's absolutely immutable and it's scarce in that respect. So you can't actually add to it anymore. So the fact so the monarchy complements this. So a dynasty is like the human institution designed to think about grandchildren. I told you before, they have to think about the long term. So their first duty is to tax the citizens as least as possible and to protect their sorry, I'm losing my thoughts over here. They take at least a day, so they tax their citizens as little as possible. So this then creates a much freer society, and society that are able then to save and learn and to pass on wealth to next generations. So that is what's very essential to a strong civilization, is that you're able to create and build an everlasting family, and that is key to a civilization. You know, without families, without having the ability to build a strong family, there's civilization that is destroyed, and this is what we're seeing today in the fiat world.
This is super interesting, and I think a lot about that question, like what impact Bitcoin will have on the state system. And I'm so divided on like where we're going, because right now, when you look at most governments, they are incentivized to spend as much money as possible to make the citizen as happy as possible.
Yes.
To keep getting reelected. But then what happens if their capacity to spend money gets decreased, or they cannot print any more money? So if they want to spend more money, they have to raise taxes, which is arguably even more unpopular than printing it, obviously, because it actually you see it directly. So I'm not fully there, like where we end up on a Bitcoin standard and how nation states will kind of form around a sound money standard, if we're really zooming out like decades and hundreds of years in the future. Obviously, in the next 10 years, probably not a lot of things will change, but maybe things will change a lot in like 100 years or 200 years. Do you think about the impact that Bitcoin might have on the formation of nation states, if it even has one?
I think it does have a huge impact. I think one of the reasons why civilizations break down is because the money is corrupted. And there's this one interesting, I would call it theory. It's studied by, it was a Greek philosopher. His name was Polybius, and he came up with the study of anicyclosis, and showed that a country, a nation goes through 7 stages, and how a leader first comes about. And the stage 1 is that from a leaderless society, you then over time creates one king, and that king, then you start that. So you have a strong individual. That strong individual rules and passes, and then he has he hands down the power to his children, and you have a very good natural monarchy forming there. So that's stage one, is monarchy. But over time is that the monarch, the hereditary line becomes weaker and weaker, and you end up getting weaker kings. And so weaker kings, you end up with a tyrant. So that good model, monarchy, then turns into tyranny. So that's stage number 2, tyranny. Then people start to get upset, and then so you have the aristocracy rising up and taking down that tyranny, and then you have a nice form of governance, which is an aristocracy. But of course, that's stage number 3, is aristocracy. Then that aristocracy, of course, they start to favor each other. You get some fat cats, you get some corruption and so forth, and then you get the bad side of aristocracy, which leads to the stage number 4, which is oligarchy. Then after oligarchy, people have had enough, and then really you get the demos, the people rising up, taking down the oligarchy, and you have democracy. Then after a while, the democracy is working okay, but because of the incentive structure we spoke about with democracy, then that starts to fail. And then you end up getting mob rule. That's the 6th stage. And mob rule is chaos. And then from the chaos, you go back to stage number 1, which is you'll get a strong leader coming out of that, and you'll get to monarchy again. I think we are at that point right now where the decline of democracies, democracies don't last forever. And we are starting to see strongmen all around the world. You can classify Trump as a strongman. You can classify Putin as one. And there's maybe some other ones out there. I mean, Millet, you could classify, even though I question his economics. That's another subject. And I think what I'm going back to how Bitcoin affects all this is, I think that Filip's anicyclosis is harder to go through. It's harder to, it's not a perfect model. It doesn't fit to all societies. It hasn't, but it's definitely something that you can see happening, and it's happened over history many times. But I think if you add Bitcoin, if you add hard money into that, then I believe you would be stuck, or you would find it harder to go from one stage to another. So it actually helps to strengthen and stabilize societies. It was something that was well studied, Filip's anicyclosis. The founding fathers of the US, they actually looked at it and they actually said, okay, well, what sort of model do we want for the US? And so the US tried to pick the best of all three. So they have a bit of elements of monarchy, elements of aristocracy, and elements of democracy. The US is not a perfect democracy, and it's a republic. It's not even and it has the separation of powers of the judicial, the executive, and the legislative. Legislative and executive. That's it. But over time, these things do fail, and I think thanks to broken money and so forth, that that you go back to one ugly stage or another. And I think that now with the fact that we've actually discovered perfect money, that this was only going to help figure out how to stabilize countries. And I believe, democracies over time will start to figure out that they're not as efficient as they use as they claim to be. And I believe maybe we'll get to better forms of democracy, where we'll get to the Swiss model of direct democracy, and that is much more stable than proportional representation or first past the post systems, which kind of favor bigger parties and lead to situations where we have informed minorities governing over uninformed majorities. Whereas Switzerland, because they have this direct democracy, and they have, I don't know how many cantons, 26 different cantons, it's much more decentralized. And this is a model that you see some people prophesizing, like Hans-Hermann Hoppe, saying that that Europe could, if we continue the way we're going to end up to having smaller decentralized kingdoms, so to speak, all over Europe, with smaller populations, maybe different governing models, some practicing democracy, direct democracy, some practicing full absolute monarchy, some maybe semi-constitutional monarchies, but you'll have different competing small nations all over Europe. And this is something that how Germany used to be once upon a time. This was before they were united as one, that they were actually some 30 or 40 different competing kingdoms. And times were pretty good there. They culture was at a very high level. You probably know more than I do, and given that you're closer to the region. So I think Bitcoin helps us understand all this.
I guess this is also how it probably ends up, no matter how it really like shapes out, but smaller, more decentralized organizational structures is also my best guess of like how it will end up. And I think you made a great argument and analysis towards that. I'm also, because you mentioned it, I saw Javier Milei winning again in the midterms. I don't know a lot about Argentinian politicians, but like he had now 2 years in office, and then he had in the Senate now an election, so not the presidency.
Yes, he somehow came across, he won that, given that he hasn't really kept his promises. He never shut down the central bank. He believed that if shutting down the central bank would actually cause hyperinflation. You should see the arguments that were being posted on the Mises Institute, and Safety came out with some very good, convincing arguments about how Milei was a bit of a flop. I mean, I'm probably going to upset people saying that, but I read what Safety had to say, and it was quite, it's very well written.
Yeah, he was. It was disappointing, but he runs still like on such a big scale. He cuts probably down on government costs and all of that, like in the biggest way on the scale that Argentina is. So I was also disappointed on like, because he came in and had like this big things, and now he kind of doesn't do that many big things.
He's doing the peso carry trade, basically. He's created another grift, basically, borrowing money to basically game the exchange rate of the pesos and lending. I don't know how the carry trade actually works, but that is Safety described it. I should have read up more on it, but it's actually quite interesting.
Interesting. I have to read that up.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was interesting for me because he was almost like a very, very celebrated figure in the Bitcoin space, and people looked at like that could be a Bitcoin model. But at least till now, it didn't turn out that way.
No, they have. But you got to remember that Argentina is probably one of the most indebted countries in the world. They probably owe about 30 or 40 billion to the IMF. And you saw what happened now with El Salvador. There was that they had to sort of pull back on their Bitcoin adoption narrative. Well, not narrative, I'd say structure, really, that that is not really, they were basically still under the grips of the IMF, and it's very difficult to shake off these parasitical international organizations that rely on you being dependent on the system, and it's difficult to get out of their grips. And I think El Salvador did their best to try and get out of it, and they're still very much in it. But I got to, I still respect to Bukele what he's done. He's turned the country around from being the murder capital of the world to being one of the safest, if not the safest country in the Western Hemisphere and in all of Americas. So respect to that. But with Bitcoin, it's a big threat to the system. It's a huge threat to the system. You can clean up your crime. You can clamp down on cartels, on gangs and all that. But as soon as you start touching the money, the thing that keeps the world going around, the bad world going around, then, there's ways of them keeping you in check.
I guess it takes time to heal from that system.
And I think, no, exactly. It takes time. Even if they made big moves. They actually woke up a lot of people and with what he did. And he's a very good marketeer. He's very good at selling the idea of Bitcoin. But when it comes, when in reality, it's very difficult to fully implement it. So that's why I think I'm very bullish about mining. I think mining is one of the best ways for countries to adopt mining and store of value. But when it comes to media of exchange, what everyone was excited about in El Salvador, that it's their legal tender. It was their legal tender, so to speak. That's what got people really excited. But at the end of the day, money doesn't have to be a medium exchange in its first years of existence. The most important thing is that people collect it and people store it and people find ways of collecting it. People find ways of storing it. People find ways of leveraging its store of value properties. And then from that, once we get to a stage of good adoption, then people start figuring out ways of how to spend it. And when they're comfortable to spend it, because if something is valuable and as precious as Bitcoin, as scarce as Bitcoin, you're not going to partake with it easily. And that's the point. That's what we're trying to change. We're trying to change this whole high velocity trash economy that we live in right now, where you have to spend to keep the system going. No, we want to change into a saving economy, into the economy where we can save and in doing so lower the time preference of everybody. That's what we're here to do. And so the medium exchange side of thing is good to have. You can have it as an option. I think that's what we should be about. It's open free market. Let the market decide what's the best form of currency to transact today. That's not necessarily Bitcoin, but it can be a fiat on Bitcoin rails. And that's interesting. And I think that's what we're seeing right now with Jack Dorsey's adoption. That's what we're trying to do at Jan 3 with USDT, but on Bitcoin chains, on Bitcoin liquid chain. At the end of the day, that's what you save in Bitcoin, you can spend in fiat. But what's brilliant is the adoption can happen if you introduce the Bitcoin rails, which makes it more efficient and it makes it more efficient, just better for civilizations.
Absolutely. And then introduces ethical money to an unethical monetary system.
And then ethical money and ethical banking, one-to-one banking. None of this fractional reserve bullshit. None of this Cantillon creating bullshit out there. It's horrible. This is, we should all be very opposed to this system that we're currently in. But slowly people are realizing, and I think the business models out there, banking models out there, who will start actively promoting, marketing that they're adopting a one-to-one non-fractional reserve banking. So just reserve banking, real one-to-one. Maybe they can go off a little bit 1.112 or something like that. But no, if you can actually offer a clean service that's not going to print money to keep unknowingly, not unknowingly, which is basically just create money just to keep the business going, then I think it's going to be hard business today, but you'll do better in the future.
I also feel like that it makes me really excited whenever I think about whenever the price or anything noisy happens, I remember the fundamentals of Bitcoin, and then I remember how excited I am about the fundamental freedom technology, the open source ledger that we are building here. And it kind of is all that short-term noise really doesn't matter. And at the end of the day, it's just the long-term vision.
Exactly. We just wanted to get rid of that Cantillon privilege that many of these JP Morgans, I'm going back to JP Morgans and all those guys, those too big to fail institutions. We were trying to get rid of that.
100%. 100%. This is it's really good. We have one question to ask each and every one of my returning guests. I hope I asked this the last time also, but asked it all the returning guests, and the question is, what have you learned outside of Bitcoin since your last appearance? I think it was like, I don't know, half a year, 8 months or something like that ago.
Oh, good question. I don't know. What have I learned? Recently, I've tried to pick up some reading. I've learned. I'm actually reading the Bible now. Here we go. I'm reading. I'm very much in. I'm an Orthodox Christian, Serbian Orthodox Christian, and I have really taken to the church, going to the church again, more than ever. And I'm reading works, not just the Holy Bible, but works from people that are big Christians out there. So C.S. Lewis, Chesterton. Right now I'm reading C.S. Lewis, The Abolition of Man, and then the first chapter, and it's beautiful, talking about the dangers of relativism and subjectivism. So there's a lot of things like that right now that are really interesting, and I'm trying, in my busy schedule, trying to take some time just to learn to read good works of literature. And thanks to Bitcoin actually opened me up to this, and speaking to Bitcoiners out there, many very highly educated Bitcoiners out there who taught me about Austrian economics, but also about other forms of philosophy and ideas. And it's beautiful. And Bitcoin has also made me understand the need, and made me a fully fledged Christian again. 15 years ago, I was like borderline atheist. A bit of an nihilist. I was working traditional finance, making good money, but then spending it on Fridays, going partying, no future. I was making good money, but not enough to really buy a house. And then when I met my wife and married her and had our son, that started to change things. And that was also about the same time I discovered Bitcoin. So once you start to see the future more, you have the future in your hands, you have your son in your hands, you start to think, I've got to make a better world for him. And that was difficult. That's very difficult to grasp and to swallow that. And then you understand what Bitcoin is. And that was 2-3 years later, after having my son, I really understood what Bitcoin is about during the COVID pandemic. Then that's when the ideas started to come together, and I started to understand what the need, how monarchy is a superior form of governance over democracy, and how Bitcoin can actually help that, and how there's synergies between one and the other. And that also led me to going back to the church, and to going to church on the Sundays, and it led me to seeking the truth. And truth sets finding the truth led me to going back to Jesus Christ. And I love going to church on Sundays, being with my community. It's speaking to beautiful people out there, and everyone sharing ideas, stories, people going through good times, bad times, and that whole community is beautiful. And that's what I'm really into these days. So learning about Christ, learning about my church, about culture, and reading some interesting literature works. That's what I've been doing, as well as trying to push the idea of monarchy, and trying to help my country, and trying to push my foundation, given that we're going through a very tough social political climate at the moment. And now I'm trying to ramp up efforts with my foundation, my wife's and I's foundation. So we've got exciting things happening. We're super busy, but super excited. But also it's, very uncertain times. And I'm very positive for the future, for the long-term future, but for the short to medium-term future, it's tough, I think, and it's tough for many of us out there. The world is not going through a good time, but I'm also encouraged to see a lot of people waking up to the bullshit that's been governing us for decades. And in doing that, I'm also encouraged to see a lot of people going back to the church as well, like myself. So yeah.
Really cool. I love it. Yeah. Like this is actually, in that question, I'm fascinated how often religion actually comes up, and coming back to this value. Yeah, like it's good. It's often because I myself became I was completely outside of the religion when I started the podcast, and this is a side effect of me having a Bitcoin podcast, me getting back in this world again, which is interesting. Interesting side effect of a Bitcoin podcast. You wouldn't like believe it when you started. It's like, oh yeah, like I will learn about Christianity. Like all I learn about a religion, I learn about the faith to God and all of those things.
It's beautiful. No, it's really beautiful. Really beautiful. This. I'm really encouraged to hear that from you, and that people in your podcast actually answer with similar manner as I did.
Yeah, 100%.
That's great.
Before,
amen.
Amen to that. And actually, we have end routine, as you know, in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest is.
Yes.
And the previous guest asked you the question, do you think that 50+% of Bitcoin users will do self-custody in 10 years?
That's a good question. What is it right now?
That's a hard question.
Yeah.
It depends on like, because
sorry.
I was just saying, I remember Treasure, and they are a big provider, releasing something like only 2 or 3% of Bitcoin users or people that have Bitcoin actually use a hardware wallet. So I don't know how high it can go or how low it can go, but I don't think it's really more than like 10%. When you count all the people in that have some exchange and have some $1,000 on some Coinbase account.
Goes to your question, where's Strategy's coins stored?
I mean, if you're really like serious about that question, you're like, everyone has to do self-custody.
Yeah.
In Bitcoin, it's just like, because only if you do self-custody, you're a Bitcoin user. I heard that take also, like you cannot be a Bitcoin user without holding your own keys.
Well, here's the thing. So what happens? Okay, maybe in 10 years, I don't think 50%. I think, as you said right now, look, just by discussing it, it's probably less than 50% now. And I don't think that number is going to get worse. It's going to get lower. I think that there's only those who really understand Bitcoin. There's always going to be a niche, a growing niche, but always going to be a niche, I believe, of individuals, of people who understand. And there's be a point in time when I believe that Bitcoin, I think we talk about this, and I'm not the expert here, but that Bitcoin is going to be unaffordable. Using Bitcoin on main chain is going to be unaffordable for many of us. And that's where this is where second layer, maybe even third layer solutions, whatever they will be in the future, are going to come in. But are you going to be able to have self-custody on those layers? I don't know. That's a question I put out there for everyone else. So I don't know. I think people aren't. I don't think we are right now as individuals, as average individuals, we are not prepared to self-custody our own wealth. That's a concept that's too difficult to put into practice and too hard to grasp for many. Well, not hard to grasp. I think people can grasp it, but they have no way of protecting their wealth and understanding it. And I found it very difficult to actually to get my coins onto cold storage. It's a big learning curve, really is. So no, I don't. But even on a hot wallet, that's not too hard, but it still required a bit of studying to get on the hot wallet. I had someone to show me how to do it, and it wasn't straightforward. So definitely not 50%. So definitely no, I think much less than that. And even right now, as you said, probably 10-15% are probably doing it. And in 10 years, maybe 5%. But who knows? Maybe education gets better. Maybe things get really bad. Maybe banks start to blow up. Maybe we are going to go through a huge financial crisis. Maybe people want to pull out their money and we can't trust any exchanges or anything like that. So maybe self-custodial service actually blows up because there's a need for it, and it's going to be a lot of people educating themselves about it. So who knows? I guess it depends on how crazy things go in the next 10 years. If things go really crazy in 10 years, like really crazy, then yes.
And this is interesting because I have this theory that there is two ways that people learn. Either it's so convenient and so great that people automatically get it. So like there's apps that do self-custody that make it so easy that it's even better than the apps that have someone else's custody in. And the other thing is pain. The pain of the fiat system is so bad, and there's so much bank freezing and accounts crashing, and the fiat thing is just so bad that people are like, oh, you need self-custody, otherwise you're screwed.
But it's how we do it at Jan 3 with Aqua Wallet is we have our marketplace, and when you buy Bitcoin, it goes straight into your self-custody. So that's one way to solve this situation is when you buy Bitcoin, you're buying it and it goes straight into self-custody, and there's no leaving it on exchange even for a second before you transfer it into self-custody. That's the way around it. And we need to push more services like that. So I think
I like that. This is super important because I don't know a lot of exchanges that do that. I know you do it. I think Relay does it in Europe. I think
yes, exactly.
Bull Bitcoin, I think also does it.
Bull Bitcoin, yeah, and Strike as well. No,
Strike, I'm not sure. I've never used them.
I never used it as well, but I'm guessing. But anyway, no. But Aqua does it, and that's the feature. That's one of the things that's super important. I mean, that's. We're trying to do that at Aqua, is trying to build that super app and trying to be as self-custodial as possible, which is what we see the future is trying to bank the billions of other people that are unbanked across the world and make it as easy as possible. On the face, you have your savings account, which is Bitcoin on main chain, and then you have your spendings account, which is Bitcoin on Liquid and USDT on Liquid. And that also you can transact with Lightning. And then you have the marketplace. And so in that marketplace, we're going to, as I said, we can buy Bitcoin there. We can swap from from Bitcoin Liquid to Bitcoin main chain, and from Bitcoin Liquid to Bitcoin USDT on Bitcoin. Make it super easy, but we're also going to have other things available on that marketplace. Where else? What else? Like, I can't even think right now.
Too many exciting things for
that's too many
going on.
Oh God, I'm not doing too well over here, but we're gonna have what are we gonna do? I can't even think right now. Yeah, eventually we're gonna be able to
and lending stuff.
Lending stuff, yes, we're gonna do some lending on there. We're gonna be able to pay utility bills on there as well. We're going to
That's a big one for the banking thing, because you have to have the possibility to pay people in fiat, and because people will, at least in the short and medium term, still only accept fiat. Many people will only do this, and we see it. Bitcoiners are getting unbanked, and so you have to have some service providing in between where you pay Bitcoin and then the Bitcoin gets transferred into fiat, and then someone gets the fiat bills, like the utility paying things. Like that's huge, because this allows people to actually live on Bitcoin.
Exactly. So I don't know how it disappeared from my head. It's we have our Dolphin card. So people now.
The card.
Yes,
I heard about
that's
that.
it, and I can't believe I haven't actually spoken about this, and this is something I should have spoken about earlier on. Maybe I've spoken about it so many times that I feel like everyone knows about it. But no, I need to speak about it. That we have a Dolphin Visa card, and this is open to everyone. It's a way of living on a Bitcoin standard. You can actually go to the Aqua Wallet, go to Dolphin Card. This is still in beta form right now, but we're rolling out more and more. And in a few weeks, it's going to be open. We're just ironing out some issues, but you can actually load a Visa card on your phone. So you download like a card on your phone, like you have Apple Pay or something, and you can load it up to $4,000 a month. So spend $4,000 a month. There you go. Thank you very much.
Interesting.
And
love it.
When you do it first, all you need to provide is just an email. That's any email you want. That's the only thing you do. And once you've done that, then you can then test it out. I would say just load it up with $10, $15 or something, and test it out first to see if it works. And once it works, you're pretty much good to go. And every place that accepts Visa, which is a lot of places, are now you can now pay Bitcoin with that or USDT.
You can make transacting. So you can just like load with an email address the card on your phone and put Bitcoin on there, and you basically can spend it all across
up to 4,000 a month. Yeah, that's the way we keep under the radar.
Yeah, 4,000 a month. I think for most people, it should cover most expenses.
Yeah, for most people.
I don't spend that much.
Yeah, I know. I mean, no, for me, that's more than enough, really. And that's so that already you can do a lot with that. That's already come living on a Bitcoin standard. So that's really great. And so we're rolling that out.
Does it go from like the self-custody wallet directly there? Is it connected to Lightning or like to a Bitcoin wallet?
It's connected. It goes from your self-custody wallet straight into load the card like an Apple card, like an Apple Pay card.
Interesting.
Yes.
So like when you are spending it, it gets converted in that moment.
You top it up. You have to top it up, and you're spending it from the balance on the card, like a top-up card, basically. Yeah. And you can only top it up max 4,000 a month. That's a good question. Can you spend more than 4,000, or do you top up 4,000? I should know that. I should know that.
Oh yeah,
I haven't got to that limit. That's
so this is really cool.
Yeah, so there's that, and we're going to improve the user experience on Aqua as well. So you'll see that's going to be improving over the next few weeks. We're spending a lot of time on that. It's going to be more. It's going to be very fluid, very seamless, just like Aqua, just like water.
And so, because it is only required with an email address, it doesn't matter where in the world you are, you can use it. There's no restriction of like only EU.
We have a situation with US and Canadian users, but we're actually rolling up a different Dolphin card, so to have US and Canadian citizens as well. It's just a regulatory fix, basically, that it's not top up, it's top up or pre. I forgot how it is, but it's basically it's going to be available to everyone around the world.
100%, really cool. I loved. I wasn't actually. I heard about it, but I actually haven't looked into it. And so the fact that you can top it up with just an email address, and obviously Bitcoin, that is really cool, because most other solutions I've found, like Wave.space and Bringin, and there are probably like 2-3 other ones that I forget right now, they all require a KYC process. And I always love non-KYC if possible. And I see that like it's very hard to do non-KYC, and it limits the user experience sometimes. Exactly. But if it's possible, it should be the default.
Yes, exactly. And it's just a way of being more private individual. If you want to really, really do care about your privacy, it's when you're spending on these like a secure virtual card, you're essentially shielding your personal information from merchants that way as well.
Really cool. Thank you so much for showing me that. I will look into that if I can use it myself, because I think spending Bitcoin is really, really a cool thing to do. And yeah, thank you so much also for coming on. Before I let you go, where can people find Aqua, the things that you're doing, Jan? That's an Austrian way to pronounce Jan. Yeah, I couldn't think about the English way to pronounce the name. Jan 3 and all the things that you're doing.
On Twitter, you can find me as X. You can find me as Prince Filip 1. That's PRINCFILIP1. And you can also find Jan 3 and Jan3.com on X. And then I'm also on Instagram, and Jan3's on Instagram as well.
I still also say Twitter, and it's been over 2.5 years already. It's crazy.
I didn't give you the question for the next.
You can already give it now, but we can also do it offline. If you already have
offline. One. Of course. Sorry, I do it offline. I forgot about that.
Then thank you so much, Filip, for being on the podcast. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.
This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.